Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha wherever you're at around the world. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. Got my co-host here, Mr. Ratherby Squidding. Brother,
Hey.
how you doing?
Doing well. Happy Friday. Looking forward to the weekend.
Friday. Happy Friday.
Yeah, so far so good.
Looking forward to the weekend. Yeah, right? Not too bad. Before we get started, of course, we got to pay some bills. Want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes. Want to say thank you to the moderators in the chat and everyone who's in the chat right now listening on KGRADB, live on the road, wherever you guys are at. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Want to say we do have ways to support the show. Patreon, for as little as $1 a month. You can have unlimited access to the same thing that nobody pays. It's the exact same show. There are no paywalls. But you feel good doing it. If you want to support the show, you really love the show, it's a great way to support. Super chats are open if you have any burning questions that absolutely must be answered, but we will be trying to take as many questions as we can. So if you can support, that would be awesome. Let's see here. What else, Rather? We've got links for Rather. We've got links for our guests that will be on the show today in the description below. And we've got a merch store as well. So check out the merch store and our Discord. Today's Friday. So got to pump up the Discord, Rather. We've got our Discord link in the description below, so you can join us after the show if you want to interact with us, have a conversation with us. It's always a pretty good time.
Fun discussions.
So yeah, always a fun discussion. So come hang out with us in the Discord. Other than that, let's get started with today's show, shall we, Rather?
Let's do it. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Let's do it. Michael might be a little late. Well, he's technically already late. Not a little. He's already a little late. I don't know. Let's see if Michael shows up. He had to go to the DMV. Guys, he's moving. All right. So, we got to cut as much slack as we possibly can to Michael Mataluni and his other passion and love, the Singularity Lab and everything that he does over there, man. He works his tail off. So, we hope he's here. I'm sure he'll be here. But it's going to be late. But either way, let's get started. Without further ado, friend of the show, supporter of the show, the first blue check mark to ever support the show, and friend of the show. I'm so happy he's here because every time he's here, he's always providing some fun and cool information. Mr. Jazz Shaw, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, as always. Little scheduling snafu. I thought the show was going to be 3 hours later than this, but here I am. And I'm even, by the way, no tie, but I'm wearing a shirt. With a tie. No tie, but no tie. I have a collar.
It's a button.
And buttons.
Buttons, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's flannel because apparently the high temperature tomorrow morning when I get up is going to be -7 here. So enjoy what you've got wherever you are.
Ooh, yeah, it's a crispy 68.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to be somewhere around 73 degrees lower than that tomorrow morning in New York. So.
Oh God, I do feel for you, sir.
Stay warm.
I did live there for 7 years. How's the weather up there? And why are we talking about weather? Let's not talk about weather.
No, let's not do that. My bad.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So Jazz, well, first of all, Happy New Year. Thanks for being here. We didn't have any live shows for the last 2 weeks of the new year, and I had to work you into this new schedule. I'm trying to schedule things months in advance now, so we could do as much homework and research on the things that we're talking about before we do the shows. And so, oh no, we lost Rather. All right, Rather will be back in a second. So you released an article on the Debrief about the 1994 Lake Michigan sightings, and it's actually, if a lot of people don't know, it's actually was part of a flap, if I'm not mistaken, as well, right?
Yeah, there were the MUFON records that we uncovered when we were looking into that. There had been an average of 10 to 15 reports per day to MUFON for a period of about 3 weeks. But on the date of the event we're going to be talking about today, they spiked and went off the chart. And it's been covered on so many television shows. And the sad part is when you watch a lot of the TV shows, or alternately, you look at some of the debunkers and skeptics, one side might make things look more than what they were, and the other side will ignore really good data and say, well, I've come up with some other explanation, And much like we did with the Japan Air sighting last summer at the debrief. I spent some time this month and went through, dug up all the original source data that there was, and tried to find out, separate fact from fiction and see how strong this sighting was.
Well, okay, so that's the thing, because one of the time, not the last time, you've been on so many times. The one of the times you were on, we talked about nothing but this Japanese airline flight, in '89 or '88. What year was it?
Yeah. No, wait a minute. I got
I
that
believe it was
up
'89,
right
if my memory
here.
serves correctly.
86.
86. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Was way
It was
off.
Japan Airlines Flight 1628 in
There you go.
1986. Yeah.
So in that article, in your discussions with us, I remember this used to be my favorite case until you kind of knocked me down a few pegs on it, because you're like, Lou, the other pilot didn't see what this one pilot is claiming to see. And we talked about that. We dove into that. Go check that episode out if you guys want to see us break down that Japanese airline flight discussion. But it was really cool. But I'm hoping this is not the case with this story. But yeah, let's get into it. What about this case is either more unique or just as mundane, maybe, as the Japanese airline flight?
I just at the top, I would say the difference is night and day.
Yeah.
They both have a ton of data behind them. The data for the Japan Airlines flight did not match up with what you saw on a lot of the there was one show with William Shatner covering it, and well, there were a bunch of them. And
I mean, even Michio Kaku had said at one point it was one of the best, if not the best, UFO case on record, because
right,
of the fact that it had so many radar systems and credible pilots verifying it. And I was like, you know how much I love Michio Kaku. I'm sure Simon Fly or somebody will bust my chops about it in the discussion. But yeah, go on. Sorry.
yeah, the reality was when you go back, and they're all published at the Black Vault. If you guys put the link in the chat for later on or whatever, everybody can go look. We went through and examined all of the actual transcripts of the interviews with the pilot, with the co-pilot, with the navigator, who are the only three people. And not just them, but we have recordings of the radio traffic from three different towers, one civilian and two military, and what was going on at the time and what was seen. And most of that did not support what the pilot was saying. There were some kind of vague, ambiguous things on radar for a couple of seconds. They sent three different planes, one military, two commercial, over to go find out what this guy is being chased by. Nobody saw anything except the pilot. It turned out to be like a one witness event.
When there should have been at least 2, 4, at least 6 to 8, right?
at least, and
Yeah.
nobody else is on record. And the two guys in the cockpit with the pilot, the most they said was, we did see some lights. They looked like, quote, town lights. They thought they were either seeing stars or the lights of a distant town as they were approaching. They never saw any craft. They never saw anything with structure. The pilot was the only one who reported that. So I had to come away from that one being at least somewhat dubious. The Lake Michigan event, very different. Very, very different.
Yeah, there you have people on the ground even calling in and saying they saw something, right?
Oh yeah, there were multiple witnesses. I'm going to pull this up right now, just for a couple of the highlights. Yeah, for anybody who's looking for it, it was published on January 3rd. This actually came out a little while ago. But the Lakeshore event had just a bunch of good information that was available. There were multiple law enforcement officers in different precincts who were kind of like chasing this thing, as it went along. Just as a teaser, and maybe we can do another show later, I've got another one that's finished that's currently in editing for a different one in Illinois that bears a lot of similarity to this. But the Lakeshore event was really great because we have a collection of recordings, and in the article, you'll be able to sit there and listen to them, of the 911 calls that were coming in, of the conversations between police officers and dispatchers as this object, whatever the heck it was, was sort of moving out across Lake Michigan. And perhaps most importantly, there was a guy from the National Weather Service. His name was Jack Bouchon. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've never heard anybody say it out loud that I remember. But he was talking to one of the police officers, Officer Veldhuis, and they went on for some time while Veldhuis was seeing this thing, above the land and then above the lake. And there was a National Weather Service guy who was sitting there and tracking it and watching it. And I find the best evidence in this case was the evolution of the conversation that you can listen to. And in the article, we link to the recording. You can, it's not a reenactment from Discovery Channel or something. It's the actual recording of the conversation. And they both started out initially like, well, this has got to be nonsense, right? And they were speculating, well, they put a new radio tower up a little while ago and they changed the lights on it. Maybe that's what they're seeing. And they're being skeptical, and as you would, right? But as the time goes on, and this went on for a good 15-minute period, the NWS guy is talking to the cop who's now seeing it in real time. These aren't points of light in the sky, it's objects. And there's a bunch of them. And the NWS guy is feeding back and going, no, I've never seen anything like this. And the returns he's getting on the radar are much larger than any commercial aircraft. And more importantly, he has manual control of the radar. And he's describing this on the radio as they go through. And he's using it kind of like a spotlight to catch some of these objects. And he has them, and he has a size, he has a distance, and then suddenly they disappear. And he has to go back up and search again. And a couple of them have jumped like 5,000 feet at a time in a matter of seconds. And now he's got them up way higher. And they just kept moving, and they were heading towards Chicago. And by the time everybody was done, and there was a recording, the radar recording was released to MUFON, and they put it out, and it matched up with what the guy said. And it was really just such good data, and there was nobody that offered a really compelling alternate explanation for the case.
Yeah,
does that mean it's aliens? No, but there was something weird being seen that they couldn't explain, and they have not just credible eyewitnesses that were police officers, but the National Weather Service, and there were kind of conflicting ones because there's two major airports near there, both of whom said they didn't pick anything up on the radar, but at what moment were they looking and how high were the objects at that time? That is not defined.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts about this case is that there's all these audio recordings of people observing it at the time, which is just fascinating to listen to. Was that all collected by MUFON and made available, or kind of how did that all come to be? Because normally we don't have such great firsthand evidence like that.
It wasn't all MUFON, no. MUFON was in the aftermath and collecting whatever information they could get by requesting it, and they did a good job with that. But most of this was done by a couple documentarians. One of them I linked in the article, local guy and two local reporters who had gone through and collected all of that and gotten the recordings. They just asked the police, can we have the recordings? They got it, and that was published. And they also went through and interviewed the officers that were involved very shortly after the event. So this isn't distant memories, and they got, not all the descriptions were exactly the same, but you're talking about seeing unexpected weird things in the sky. They matched up pretty well. And the amount of time that it took, for the things to make the trip, none of it seemed to be unreasonable. It was all in the same places where people would have seen things. So you have credible witnesses and the National Weather Service data. That's, really one of the best arguments you can make, I think.
Damn, that's pretty wild. Go ahead, rather. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, do you? Yeah, you said it doesn't prove that it's aliens, but is there any prosaic explanation that you could think of that would fit the data? Because it does seem, truly bizarre.
I'm sure. If you believe that the government has been experimenting with things that seem to have anti-gravity possibilities and all these other things, then maybe was it a secret testing? I guess maybe. If you're the U.S. military and you have something like that and you want to test it, are you really going to test it right off the shore over Lake Michigan at 8 p.m. during prime time on a Tuesday night?
I think it depends on what the mission is.
Okay, sure. So
Well, it's coming
not
out
definitive.
of Canada almost, isn't it?
Well, they don't have the starting point. It was coming from the direction of Canada, but the first sightings, it was already, well into the United States and over that area. Also, by the way, Bushong, if you go down towards the end of the article, the way he reacted, I personally think that's one of the biggest telling points about it, because he got revealed immediately because he's, talking to the cops and he's like, I'm operating the radar, I'm doing all this. And that went national. Bushong almost immediately panicked. We found out later, he told friends, relatives, associates, he thought he was going to be fired. Because if you worked for the NWS back then, you're not supposed to talk about this stuff. He was not fired, and he actually went on to have a very long and successful career with the National Weather Service, and he retired a few years ago, a couple of years ago. But back then, 2 days later, he stopped talking to the press. He would not talk to anyone. He refused. He refused all requests for decades until after he retired. But some of the additional digging we did, we heard nothing from Jack Bushong all that time. He did an interview last summer, which I wrote about in the article, where he said he now felt vindicated because he was afraid to talk all this time. But now he's retired, and he claims that he is currently working on a scientific paper. He's a meteorologist, talking about not just that event, but research he's been gathering with other meteorologists, radar operators, who have gathered information like that. And he's going to be publishing that paper in the coming year. So I was really, his testimony is what impressed me most. The stuff that was captured on the conversation with the police, and the fact that he was so frightened that he was going to lose his job that he shut up for 20 years. And when he retired, he's like, he saw the stuff going on with all the stuff in Congress now, the Gillibrand Amendment and all that. And he came out last summer and talked to reporters again. And he was like, thank God somebody else is saying this, because now I feel vindicated. Now I'm not crazy, and he's documenting the whole thing. So I don't know, man. I really think this is one of the strongest cases out there.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to do a quick shout out to Nick Coffin at Invisible Night School.
Yeah,
he's done great reporting on this as well on his podcast, The Invisible Night School, and saying that Bushong is a friend of his. So I don't know, maybe we can get these guys both on the show one day. That would be
great. I mean, I was already telling Rather that we got to get you on the show as is, and we were going to reference one of your videos. We're going to play some audio from the MUFON clips that they picked up. I mean, they've got 23 minutes worth of phone calls of people, and that's, I'm sure, not even anywhere near all of it, because there was over 300 phone calls made.
Yep.
During, was it this flap or that? Do you know how that night?
No, that was all in that day.
Wow.
Well, that night.
Yeah.
And they recovered a bunch of them, certainly. And like you say, we've got those recordings. MUFON, a couple other sources, put them out. They've all been verified. Not everybody. I don't think everybody was seeing exactly the same thing. There were a couple of calls that were like, I saw this dot, that was going really fast. Maybe that was somebody seeing a satellite, but most of the people saw the stuff that had shape. They were described variously as round or tube shaped, and just shifting colors, different colors, things like that.
Yeah.
And those all seem to match up really well. The directions and the times match really well. We have another link to the vindication from Bushong, but also interviews with some of the people who were the first ones to make the 9/11 calls. And what they're describing sounds just like what the cops are describing. So again, is that 100% rock solid proof? Pick your poison. But man, it's really interesting. It is so much better than the Japan Air case, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds definitively like something was going on up in the air during that time.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting parts of your article was you mentioned another person, Leo Grenier.
Grenier, yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying that right,
Mhm.
but the director at the National Weather Service, who was apparently said that he kind of believes that he knows what it is and did not think it was aliens, but would not elaborate on that at all. He said that maybe when he retired, he'd reveal what he thought it was.
Right.
Do we know anything more from him?
I have done multiple searches. If I missed it, I apologize. I see no record of him coming back after all these revelations came out and giving another interview. He was the supervisor for that station. That station, by the way, is now closed. It was consolidated into some other ones in the 90s. But he was the supervisor there. And when everybody else, all the reporters were running around trying to find people to ask, a reporter went and asked him, and he was like, absolutely not. I do not for a moment believe that this was any sort. What did he use? Alien structure? He goes, and I think I know what it was. And the reporter's like, okay, what was it? Well, I'm not going to say, but I don't believe it was alien. He never gave an alternate explanation. He said he might do an interview when he retired. I could not even find whether or not he's retired yet. And I did all the digging. I don't know 100% if the guy's even alive. And I'm not saying that in a bad way or to curse anybody.
Yeah.
There's just very little
Nick
data.
Coffin from Invisible Life School is saying that he passed away, unfortunately. So
that's why I couldn't find it.
May have taken that to the grave.
Yeah.
Yeah. But does that mean he never said, I know what it was? He said he had a theory and he strongly believed that theory. And maybe no disrespect to the dead, he might have really believed that. Or the possibility exists, just like our NWS witness, Bushong, was thinking at the time, this guy's above Bushong's level. He's like, if I come out and go, oh yeah, it was flying saucers, I'm toast. I'm out of here. I'm not saying that was the case, but given the nature of the NWS at that time, and most government facilities really, is it conceivable that he gave that answer because we already know that Bushong went and told multiple people, it's like, oh my God, I got published talking about this. I'm going to be fired. I'm going to lose my career. Was he thinking that and a little more adept? Like, I got a family. I'm working on my retirement plan. I'm not talking about this. Like I say, I can't prove that. But as a supervisor, somebody that high up, it's like, hey, do you think this was UFOs? Is it really that hard to believe that his first answer to the reporters would be, no way, this was UFOs? And maybe go a little further and go, I have an alternate theory. Oh, what's your alternate theory? Well, I can't tell you right now, but I'll tell you after I retire. And then he dies. So I guess now, and thank you for the input in the lot. That's how great these shows are. You keep gathering new data. That story literally and figuratively died on the vine. We're never going to find out unless he told a family member and somebody goes and interviews them what his theory was. But he never told us the theory. So do we assign more credibility to that or to the guy who was sitting there controlling the radar system and talking in real time to a police officer? I'm sorry, I'm leaning towards the NWS guy.
Yeah, no, I'd lean that way as well. I am curious though. So these National Weather Service people who are operating these radars, occasionally you got to assume that they probably do see some secret military stuff on their radars. Do you have any insight into if there are protocols for that, or if they're, do these radar operators and the National Weather Service have access to classified information? Do they have to sign stuff with security clearances? And do you have any insight into that at all?
I've never heard of that, and personally, I kind of doubt it. They're not. The National Weather Service is not involved in building stealth planes. They're not involved in any sort of technology. They're involved in watching what's in the skies. I do certainly know for a fact, it's not a case of believing, that the military will, if they're doing tests, this is particularly true like out in Nevada, New Mexico, and things like that. If they're putting up flights that they don't want talked about, they will alert the Weather Service and the FAA and say, hey, we have flights scheduled for this time. These are classified. They get that alert and they don't report them and go into a bunch of chatter about them. It's like there's, USM, US military dash 37D or whatever. And yeah, they told us they were doing that, and that's that, and that's none of our business. That's okay. So long as they're not getting near anybody else, no flight safety hazard. They certainly know that. Maybe we can reverse Rather's question and say that if there was a test going on over that area, unlike Michigan, that the government might have informed the NWS and said, hey, you might catch a few weird blips this evening in this area because we're doing this test. That's classified. And if they had done that, then I think that Bouchon, when he got called, would have said, no, I don't see anything irregular, or something along those lines, right?
Yeah,
But he
for
was
sure.
just so amazed. It's like, what is that? And it jumped 5,000 feet, and I had to struggle to recapture a lock on it. A guy that had been told that there was military testing going on. And again, this is not from the record. We're off into opinion land here. Make that very clear. But if he's the guy on the radar and there was a test scheduled and it was known, somebody would have told him, right? And he wouldn't have freaked out. And when the cops called, he'd be like, no, we got the usual flights, then that's fine. Because he knew there was going to be something there. He would have known, I should say.
Yeah, and there'd be
And
nothing to be vindicated of if that was the case, right?
right. And he was abused, he said, from his colleagues, his coworkers. He was abused constantly. If this was a normal operation, even if it was a classified operation, I don't think anybody would be getting abused. It just would have been another day at the office. Just my opinion. But no, this guy's reaction is so genuine that it was one of the big selling points for me for the whole case, honestly.
So, Jazz, I'm wondering if you know what the military activity is on Lake Michigan or the Great Lakes in general. Do we I mean, I feel like this is a stupid question, but do we have submarines and any sort of naval ships that we test or run within those lakes, considering how massive they are?
No submarines that I know of, aside from small test submarines.
Right.
I went to boot camp on the Great Lakes. We definitely have ships there. I sailed on a destroyer through the Great Lakes in 1978.
Really?
So there are. Oh yeah, it was a recruiting tour. The U.S. Navy has always been friends with Canada. I was stationed in New Orleans at the time, as a matter of fact, and we went up the entire East Coast and went down through Canada, down through the locks, and into the Great Lakes, and did a recruiting tour in several states along the Great Lakes. So yeah, there is traffic of naval vessels. There are. Oh God, where to even start? I'm not going to throw out a number because somebody will prove me entirely wrong. There are multiple military air bases around the Great Lakes, and they fly flights all the time, and they do go over the Great Lakes. I'm talking conventional flights,
Yeah.
and there are fighter planes. There are, in the next article I have coming up for the St. Clair sighting, I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit. There's a base in Illinois called Scott Air Base, and they have everything from small, they're actually kind of mid-sized jets that do military or medical evacuations and things like that. Excuse me. They
Good.
fly over there all the time. And they also have really large, they have super tankers that go and do mid-air refueling that fly out of there. They fly over the lakes. They have a small fleet of executive transport planes that are not for the president, but they're the same size and on the same range as like Air Force One and Air Force Two, same style planes. They fly out of there. They fly over that all the time. So yeah, there's a lot of flights. If you're asking me, are there any bases over there that are putting stealth planes and technology and flying them over the Great Lakes? I have no idea. There are bases not terribly far away that are storied and are considered to be places where secret things go on. Scott isn't one of them. Do they fly them right over the Great Lakes? Go ask Lou Elizondo. I couldn't tell you. So, but yeah, to answer your question, the Great Lakes are big, and we do have a military presence there, generally for training for the most part, local security, because there used to be piracy issues. Sometimes today there still are on the Great Lakes. So yeah, we have naval vessels, and yeah, there's a bunch of Air Force bases around there and naval air bases around there, particularly at Northern Great Lakes, Illinois, north of Chicago. There's a huge base complex up there. And they have boot camp, they have basic training, they have real mission command up there. So yeah, we have a military presence in the area, if that's the question. Sure.
Yeah, no, that's that you definitely answered that. Well, because the thing that strikes me about this case, and the thing that I kind of go to, military, this just has got military written all over it. There's two things that struck me. The first, the year, 1994. It's not
Right.
that long ago. This could easily 1994, so we're looking at not even, well, it's a little over 20 years ago, right? 26 years ago, essentially.
We were working on stealth technology at that time.
Stealth technology, but also
Area 51.
drone technology, I feel like would be
early stages.
Yeah, maybe a little earlier than we think, just only because I mean, this is, if we're seeing it commercially now, especially when it comes to drone swarm technology, for me, that tells me, oh, well, the military might have been using this for 20, 25, 30 years. I mean, John Greenwald says that technology gaps in some cases is up to 50 years.
Could be.
So, and then the other thing that struck me was,
before you, if that was the end of the drone thing,
no,
let me just inject, if you will,
please,
one point. Is it possible that we were already experimenting with early drones at that time that maybe could do some pretty cool stuff? Well, I've read what John Greenwald has written. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now let's go back to our NWS operator. He described the radar returns as being significantly larger than commercial aircraft. In 1994, did we have drones that were 300 feet long that could perform that way and jump 5,000 feet in a blink of an eye?
Yeah,
maybe we do now,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, writing what that guy saw on the radar off to a drone in 1994, can I say it's impossible? No, but it doesn't. I don't know if anybody's seen a drone that size today, have they?
No, well,
yeah, and
go ahead.
The radar tracks, if it was just a drone, a prosaic thing flying in the sky, you would think that wouldn't be so confusing to the radar operators, right?
Yeah. Right.
Well,
very specifically, he knows how big a plane is showing up on the radar. He knows how big a small aircraft is. And
I'm
this
just
is
playing
something big.
Yeah.
Oh, please play devil's advocate.
Yeah. I was just playing devil's advocate. I'm thinking of, do we have balloon systems that can be turned on and off when it comes to being picked up on radar, and the ability for them to go from stealth to being completely seen on radar? I would venture to say we probably might have something like that. I don't know why this popped in my head.
I would venture to say we would definitely like to have that.
Yeah.
That sounds really useful.
Very useful, especially if you're trying to spy on, say, Russia or China, and you want something,
Chicago.
If you've got two balloons, right, that are 5,000 meters apart, and you turn one on and then you turn one off, it looks like it jumped 5,000 feet. And and maybe you rig it with some LED lights or something just to make it look ominous or strange or not airplane like. So either A, people don't report it, or B, when people do report it, they report it just like they did in this case. And the thing that made me think of that was a video that Invisible Night School put together. And there's one testimony of somebody calling into 911 that I thought we could all listen to that was pretty cool. That as soon as I started hearing his description of it, I'm like, oh, this sounds, and almost I could picture those swarm drone technology tech in my head and just turning on and off as far as lights are concerned. So let me pull this up for you guys, because I thought it was and thank you, by the way, Rather, who shared this video with me. I wasn't even aware of this video until today. So thank you for that, Rather. I appreciate it. I'm gonna pull this up. Just give me 2 seconds here, guys. Sorry about this. 1994. There it is. Okay, cool.
In the meanwhile, I'll sing a brief Irish lyric.
Yeah. Here we go. It's being pulled up right now. All right. Blow this up for you guys. And
Sorry,
it's just no, it's fine. It's fine. And here's the phone call for you guys to listen to.
Okay, what do you have there, sir? There were at least 4 lights, and they were all flashing like okay, they were the sequence. It was a kind of like a V, and there was 4 lights, and they were blinking back and forth. And there's no way. I mean, a plane's not that wide. And then it went down to 3 lights, and it started spinning around, like it was a circular motion. So it started going up and down, and then it went to 2 lights, and did the same thing, and now it's 1, and it spins in a circle.
Both groups, along with.
So that's the one that for whatever reason, it just stuck out to me as like, oh man, that sounds like, because we hear about this sort of all the time about how the United States, especially when it comes to the stealth fighters and stealth bombers, would fly those things over the U.S. just so they could record the reaction of everyday people and see what happens to the emergency lines, see what happens to the phone lines, who calls who says what. In this case, we get, the National Weather Service guy talking to the dispatcher at a police station, and it goes national, and boom, you could take all of that data, put it on the desk of a general and say, yep, the tech works. We fooled everybody. They thought it was UFOs. I'm just like playing complete devil's advocate. It's just something that I popped in my brain. And I feel like the tech in 1994, maybe it's reaching, I guess. I'm just speculating here. I'm just thinking of ideas, right? And maybe we could talk about this with Invisible Night School. But I don't know. I mean, Rather, what do you think? Is that ridiculous?
I can't imagine how, and I mean, maybe they can, but I can't imagine how you could turn stealth on and then off, right? Like our stealth planes work by kind of a paint that absorbs radar, and then the angles of the plane and stuff. So, especially if you have a balloon, like a big, something larger than an aircraft in the sky.
Couldn't you do it with, say, a mirror technology?
Maybe not mirror, but the thing that two points. The thing that came to mind was Rather's absolutely right. You don't turn off the stealth on our stealth bombers because it's paint, it's physical, things like that. If we want to imagine that we've had huge breakthroughs, there are theories that have been put forth that it's not a paint, it's not a metal thing, that they develop some sort of a plasma shield that they can put around a craft that makes it virtually invisible. At least a radar, possibly to the human eye, right? Those are theories that have been put forward by scientists. Like, these are things we're working on. We're trying to do it. Maybe it could be done. And that sort of thing, I think, could be turned on and off. Possibly. But again, I come back to the size. I come back to the speed. If it's a blimp that has some sort of technology that could be turned on and off or disguised in some fashion, I see your point about, man, that's a lot of work to go through. Okay, we're going to put one at 5,000 feet and one at 10,000 feet, and 10,000 feet is going to be off. 5,000 is going to be on. We're going to be coordinating through secret communications. We're going to shut this one on and this one off at the same time and confuse the hell out of this guy who's just trying to earn his retirement at NWS. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying, personally, I don't know if that's the most likely explanation. But again, everybody should be asking these questions. Everyone should be. because
Yeah.
we have no proof this was anything truly exotic. We just know that we don't have good proof that it was something completely mundane either, right? So,
Yeah.
but I don't know if there are any. I don't think we have any cases yet, including the Phoenix Lights, anything else, where we can say, oh, we've nailed this down 100%. It was extraterrestrials. No, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But which ones do the best job of saying this is really confounding, and which ones are like, that looks a little dodgy, right?
Right.
I still lean towards this one being pretty confounding.
Yeah, and I mean, I think specifically, the blinking lights is a real confounding element to me, because if it's a secret government craft, you would think that they wouldn't want to announce themselves like that, and if it's a alien extraterrestrial craft, you got to think, why would they need lights on their craft? But yeah, I guess the only potential solution to that is what you mentioned. Maybe they're plasma shielded and they're seeing the lights of that, but even that seems a little bit stretching the bounds of incredulity with, you'd think that it would just be one color and not blinking in that case, right?
Well, kind of like what Luis was saying, unless it was an intentional test, let's put some lights on it to make sure people see it and see how they react. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, and totally unrelated to this case or this conversation, what Rather was just saying, I was just having a debate this week with somebody, and it might come up on a future show. It's like, if you're an alien species, and we can't make assumptions about this, I always push back against anybody that wants to anthropomorphize aliens or alien artificial intelligence technology or anything like that. How do you know what their motivations are, right? How do we know or have any idea? Would they care if there were lights on? Do they worry, oh, we shouldn't have lights because the lights might be seen? Maybe that's something they'd worry about. Or maybe they're scientists that are flying over an ant mound, and do you care if the ants see the lights on your plane? Probably not, I'm guessing. So I don't know if any of these explanations are definitive. I think they're worth having the debate, certainly, but we don't have a smoking gun on either direction, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the time of it is the thing that also stuck out to me. Just this prime time, like let's show ourselves. Let's either show ourselves or let's test this thing at the absolute best time that everybody might see this thing.
Right when Friends was on. Maybe
right.
that's the best time because everybody's inside watching Friends.
I mean, I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was
that's
kidding, but
yeah, I know you're kidding now. No, I get it. Chrissy Newton is in the house. Hello, Chrissy Newton.
Chrissy.
And Mike. By the way, I don't think Mike's gonna make it. He's still stuck at the DMV. When he told me,
is unpredictable lines.
Yeah, when he told me 2 hours before coming on the show that he was going to the DMV, I'm like, all right, I don't know. I don't think we're gonna get Mike. But hey.
By the way, everybody
knows?
watching, Chrissy Newton has an amazing new interview with Chris Foley that's over at the Debrief.
Dave Foley, right?
Dave Foley. I'm sorry, Dave Foley.
Yep, from Kids on the Hall.
I've only about halfway through it so far, but really cool stuff. And the guy's a great guest, and Chrissy's a great interviewer. Just putting in a little plug. Go check that out.
He's an insanely smart person.
And funny.
A comedic genius, literally a comedic genius, and also really into UFOs. So it's always an interesting conversation, and you get to hear two Canadians go back and forth between each other, which is awesome.
But it's still good.
Yes. Okay. So there was something really cool that I saw, and I wanted to share with you guys. I saw this after last weekend's show. Or Wednesday show, I believe. And it was, have you ever heard of induced plasma effects?
You're gonna have to get Rather on this.
Yeah, laser induced plasma effects, to be specific.
It sounds like what Jazz was talking about.
No idea what it means.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It is in a way a little bit. So okay. So there was a very interesting conversation on Dave Beatty's profile, and this Forbes magazine popped up, this Forbes article. Somebody put this in a link and was like, hey, you guys should check out this plasma technology that the military's been working on. And this video is from 2011. Okay. And when I first saw this, I'm not going to tell you what popped in my head, but I want to know what pops in your guys' head when you first see this video. It is absolutely wild. I'm going to share my screen right now. There's no sound to it. There is sound to it, but it's just music. But I wanted you guys to just check this out.
Okay.
This is an induced plasma ball with essentially projectors in a way. But they are real plasma balls that they can move in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, no, I've seen similar technology like this with, kind of touchable holograms that look similar to this.
Yeah, I can't zoom in anymore, you guys. I wish but they're also like, I don't know if you can tell now, it's like a butterfly effect going on right now where they can make shapes and things like that with it. So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. The first thing that what's the first thing that pops in your head? Just, I guess, out of curiosity for you guys.
Well, the first thing that I thought was that it looks like a pair of the laser pointers that we play with our cats with, and except they're red and these are white, but I think there are white laser pointers. I think if I was looking at a screen that had a little more capacity to deliver like a 3-dimensional thing, like, are those things that are hanging in midair, or are they being projected on the wall and the door? Because the video doesn't really make that clear. Well, if they're hanging in midair, then that's pretty cool, I guess.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The beginning of this is what kind of caught my attention. Rather, what did you think of when you first saw this?
Yeah, I mean, it looks what David Fravor would describe the Tic Tac doing at the.
That's exactly what I thought it looked like. It looks like the way he describes the Tic Tac moving at the bottom of a jar. When he's like, if you put a ball at the bottom of a jar and you shake it, that's how this thing was moving. And at the beginning of this video, if you're looking at just one of them, not 2 of them, because especially, like, look at that. Like, that looks like a ball in a jar going 1 billion miles an hour in a whole bunch of different directions. And they describe the bubbles on the surface of the water. What if this was a plasma projection from either a submarine or drones in the sky of some sort that they were testing on our military because they knew that they were defenseless? I'm not saying that's what this is. I'm just playing devil's advocate. These are some of the things that I saw that I wanted to talk to you guys about and sort of get your let's ping pong this, I guess, to segue into it.
And interesting theories, and I certainly couldn't rule them out except for one part. It wasn't coming from a submarine.
Right.
If it was coming from a submarine, trust me, we don't have any tech that can hide one of our submarines from our surface fleet. That still does not exist. I guarantee you. So you know where every sub in the ocean is when you're out on the surface. When we're out cruising, you will find subs of ours that go along for, maneuvers, and you track them. And it's like, yep, that's our friend. If something else that shows up that displaces that much water and isn't a whale, and you detect it, nobody's going to go, oh, well, don't worry about that. No, that's going to be general quarters, so not a submarine. But could there be maybe like an airborne drone projecting something like that? If we're talking about really advanced tech, who are we to say? We might have that. Yeah. Could be.
I mean, that's tech that was in 2011. So I'm imagining that it's probably a little more sophisticated. But the thing that doesn't fit is that that's 2011 when that's being showcased at a con or some sort, and the Nimitz happened in 2004. So there is a big discrepancy there.
Well, sure, but that's not. Yeah. Is that military technology that you're showing us there, or is that kind of a
I believe
consumer demonstration?
I think it's a consumer demonstration what we're looking at. If I remember reading the article correctly, but it's been a couple days, and there's a lot of links in this, but basically the the title of the article is U.S. Navy laser creates plasma UFOs. These plasma not missile systems, but the weapon systems, these plasma weapon systems have been confused for UFOs by our pilots. And so he's proposing that maybe this technology is what these pilots are seeing.
And they certainly do that for like countermeasures like that. They use plasma, things like that to, get the missiles off their tail when they're, have a lock on them. So there is a lot of, they're surely working on stuff like that. And that has always been kind of one of my thoughts of, if there is a prosaic explanation to the Tic Tac, it looks and appears like it's moving with no mass. And so maybe it does have no mass and it is a hologram projected by a satellite or something like that. Yeah. The one thing that gives me trouble believing that is, and I don't understand how these exactly work, but you would think that if it was a hologram projected from a satellite or a drone up in the sky, the path from that hologram to the thing in the sky, there's got to be a lot of energy going in a line there, right? Yeah. And so it seems like it'd be very risky to do that with a Navy plane, zooming around, right? What if David Fravor, turned into the beam of that directed energy and blew his wing off? It seems like that would be a really real concern if that was what was going on there.
It's a good point.
Let's leave aside for the moment that I don't want to be the guy sitting in the room to have to say, I've seen the Tic Tacs twice, and trust me, they weren't holograms. But the whole thing is looking like at that film, we're seeing something that looks like my first reaction immediately was that looks like a laser pointer you'd tease your cat with, and the other things we're discussing. And over at the Debrief, we've had some really good science articles by Chris, talking about having skins on physical vehicles to deflect things like plasma skins and things like that. The idea that you can just project a believable, solid-looking thing made entirely of plasma with no beam showing up to where, and how you stop that at that distance and create that hologram. I'm trying to remember, just to put it in a good reference for everybody who doesn't follow a lot of science, was it Michael Jackson was the first person that they created a hologram on stage at an award ceremony, and he showed up and it looked pretty damn realistic, right? And they've had other people that have had like just holographic projections, people on stage at events. But at no point did it ever look like, oh, that's really a dead person that's come back. It's a zombie. It's like it had to be inside of a box to control the light and do all that. Could we do that today out over the middle of the ocean? I guess it's not impossible. Maybe they're way more advanced than Hollywood, but Hollywood sometimes takes the lead on some of this stuff. So I remain a little skeptical that I think there definitely is plasma technology going on, plasma skins on things. Could you create a beam that I couldn't see and make a ship appear a little to the east of my house that I couldn't even tell that wasn't a solid object, but it was just a plasma ball? I'm an old man, for all I know. I lived in an era where we got our messages on the phone off answering machines with cassettes in them. Maybe they're doing that stuff, guys. I don't know. But it seems like, wow, that's really, really advanced.
Yeah.
Are we there yet?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I lean. I toward the lean. No. It's a fair question. I tend to lean toward no. I mean, Alex Garcia says, why would one wing of the military engage in psyops against the other? Are you aware of how dangerous this would be for the lives of our troops? Seriously, this is not possible. I disagree. I would say the best people to test, and this is not even necessarily the military. I mean, McGowan had shared with us on a show previous that there are military contractors that, especially if the contract is on the line or they're on the fence on who to go with the contract, that sometimes that contractor will will ask for forgiveness instead of ask for permission, and go test their new toy in a part of the sky and have them respond to it, and then outmaneuver whatever is the response to it, and then boom, all of a sudden they're awarded a contract because they could outmaneuver what we have, or they could trick what we have, whatever the test is. But yeah, I could absolutely see that. And I could also see our own military doing things like that against our own equipment to see, because if we could fool our equipment, then chances are we could probably fool Russian and Chinese equipment as well, or at least come close to it, depending on what we're talking about.
Did they cite any real world examples of where that happened?
What do you mean?
Where a private industry or deep black thing was tested against
No,
live
not that
horses?
that I could think of off the top of my head. No, I don't remember him sourcing any sort of company or anything like
But
that.
let's say it's Lockheed Martin,
Yeah.
because they're in a lot of stuff. Skunk Works.
Correct.
My father-in-law worked with Skunk Works. Trust me, they're into a lot of stuff. I'm just trying to imagine the scenario that you're describing, Lou.
Mhm.
What if it didn't work? What if they sent it? Oh, we'll get permission later. And a couple of not Tomcats these days, Super Hornets turned around and went, "What the F is that? Blow it up!" And they killed everyone inside of it, and dropped it into the ocean and captured it.
No.
Is that a risk you're going to take for a test? Really? What if it doesn't work?
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying.
That seems really
I totally
risky.
get what you're saying. But again, like, if the government could pull the Gulf of Tonkin, if they could kidnap their own citizens and pump them with LSD and then drop them naked in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, that's never happened.
I'm
sorry, it happened a bunch of times.
But. Yeah, but I'm not going to put that past our own government. It makes sense that they would test some of this stuff, especially say over, when it comes to listening or surveillance. Like those things usually, aren't like, and that's what we could be looking at, a version of really highly sophisticated surveillance, not even payload dropping type of. But I'm sorry, rather, you're going to say something. What do you got?
Well, I was just going to say, maybe it's not the government testing out new technology on us. Maybe it's another government, China or Russia. If they had this type of, capabilities, I could see them potentially trying to test that out on unsuspecting Navy pilots. Wow, Jazz, you sound like you disagree there.
Oh, no, I was going along with Lou. I don't see it as likely, but people do take big risks. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of security involved. I could kind of see internally doing that. If you're the Russians or the Chinese, and are you going to go fly something over Lake Michigan in the center of North America that long ago and go, well, let's just see if we can get away with it? What happened if it failed? What happened if it got shot down? What if your new tech failed and it dropped into Lake Michigan and there was a ship out there that picked it up? Your entire program is now shot to blank in a handbasket.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I will never, unless some really incontrovertible proof is put forward, believe that the stuff that we see over our nuclear missile sites in the continental United States is foreign tech that is really experimental. And so far, they would never risk losing it to us, because as soon as we picked it up, we'd be like, wow, dude, cool tech. I think we're going to build some of this. You're not going to risk that. Maybe over a carrier battle force, because if it falls into the ocean and then wanders deep enough, maybe they won't recover it. It still sounds dubious to me. If it's foreign tech, I think it's ours, and I don't. But again, this strictly opinion. I'm not saying everything Lou's saying isn't possible. He's bringing forward some very plausible ideas in a world that we live in now, where so much seems like the lines are getting blurred between science fiction and reality, aren't they? I mean, future tech, current tech, what's in between, what are we working on, what are we hoping for, and maybe what's already happened, but the public doesn't know about that. Totally willing to say we're in unknown waters at this point, in my opinion. A lot of this stuff could be out there, and we've never been told. Could it be kept secret? I'm 100% convinced it could.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff that we're discussing and reporting on, we're really pushing the envelope of what might be possible today, especially what might have been possible in 1994, in 1980, in 1947, in even 2004. Technology moves fast, and we should remember the fact that technology moves fast means that it's now 2022. 2004, that was almost 2 decades ago. Technology today, technology in 2004 was way, way behind that because we've been moving fast the whole time.
Yeah.
What were they doing in 2004? I'm just offering that as without saying I know the answer. I don't.
Right.
I don't think any of us do.
No.
But
I think we should explore.
motion,
Yeah, we should explore the possibilities. I guess is
Sure,
the point of the
absolutely.
exercise. Just to say, hey, let's think of this as well. Because again, we don't want to give answers on the channel. What do you got, rather?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, Jazz. The nuclear stuff, the stuff in Michigan, that doesn't seem to fit the bill of the weightless holographic thing projected by space. But and it's hard to weigh the possibility of advanced human tech like these holographic things that seem to kind of defy believability versus an extraterrestrial craft and technology. It's really hard for me to even determine which one could possibly be more likely because they both seem way out there and hard to believe.
Yep.
Yeah. And by the way, a lot of the audience agrees with you, Jazz. So everybody's like, "Yep, I'm with Jazz." Which, hey, I get.
I want everybody in the audience to realize I don't have any answers. I'm not here having an argument with Lou and Rather and saying, "Oh, I know, I'm right and you're wrong, and this is crazy." We're talking about things that nobody really has the answers to.
Yeah.
But
three blind people talking to each other about what something looks like.
we mentioned this earlier. I will just tell you, I watched something the size of a bus come by near my house with no wings, no tail, no windows, no engines, and hang in midair for. I got the video up my YouTube channel for 4.5 to 5 seconds, and then it disappeared. Now, is that tech that we have? Is it tech the Russians have? Maybe. But I just, for me, I would like to see somebody from the government come forward with at least, or some from the scientific community and go, well, that's a thing we've been working on. Yeah, we could probably do that, right? Just show us some data. I'm willing to listen. Absolutely. But what I saw, I'm sorry. I don't know any humans can do that. They might be doing that every day, and I don't know. So.
Well, I'm sure someone who might have an opinion on what we're talking about is waiting in the wings, Mr. Frank Milburn. I saw both you and Frank were having a conversation on Twitter, and Jazz was like, well, maybe we could pull some strings and get us together. And I was like, yeah, we could do that tomorrow because Jazz is going to be on the show. And I know Frank will come on anytime I ask him. So
Frank
welcome,
is
Frank.
awesome.
How you doing? Frank is awesome. Yeah, we love Frank around here. How you doing, Frank? Happy New Year.
I want to say
thanks
very much. You guys, you're all awesome too. I've enjoyed all the commentary. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yep.
I've been enjoying all the commentary from you, Jazz, from you guys as well. Watching everything that's been going on the channel. It's been really, really fun recently. So, I'm like Jazz said, I'm always up for learning as well.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to shift gears just for a little bit. I know we've talked this to death, but we haven't had Jazz back on the show since the NDAA has passed. And we're now a couple of weeks into the new year. I know we haven't heard anything as far as regards, but I did want to kind of just speculate with Jazz or theorize about what the office could be, what it could look like, what the first steps might look like, what the budget might be, things like that. I know we've kind of brushed on that in early November, but I figured let's circle back around since we've got Jazz here, and then we could talk about whatever you guys want to talk about after that. How about that? Does that sound fun?
Sure.
Awesome. Sure. Okay, so Jazz, so what do you think? I mean, I guess I'll go to you first. You're the man who's our NDAA expert. I mean, and you also a political writer as well. You've been doing this for decades. So I guess what's the scoop? What should we look to see first when it comes to this office? I was reached out by our mutual friend DJ San Marcos over at Calling All Beings, and he was sent because he's also in the military, and he was curious to how do we go from a $22 million budget to something with maybe a B at the beginning of it without some serious hardware, and if that's the case, what would that hardware maybe look like?
I will tell you, at least from our sources, there's a lot of unknowns left. Okay. The fact is, it's going to happen, and it's not going to be what the people who wanted the AOI monosodium glutamate thing to be. It's coming together. The funding is already approved, but the funding that's where everybody gets confused.
Yeah.
There wasn't a budget passed that said that the UFO office is going to get this many dollars over this amount of time.
Right. It's all been speculation.
It was a portion of a gigantic budget. All right. And they are scrambling now. I won't even say scrambling. They're going through the normal process of setting up the office.
What's a $778 billion budget, correct?
I don't remember the top number, but yeah, it's always upwards near $1 trillion for the entire thing.
Yeah.
You know, but as big as the bill is, believe it or not, there are huge chunks of that bill that go down to how much money are we going to spend at all of the intelligence agencies for coffee filters. And that's one bag, and then it's like, do we want 2 more aircraft carriers?
Right.
And if we do, how much money do we put up for that? The money's broken down in very different ways. If Congress approves 2 new aircraft carriers, you're going to go build 2 of them. And here's how much money we gave you. There's other offices that are like, you have general responsibilities for this, this, and this. And we're going to throw $180 billion to you. There is no line item for every coffee filter that gets ordered underneath there. The new office is in one of those pockets. It's going to get a portion of the money. That gets sorted out later. The bill is not big enough to define every coffee filter that gets bought for the military and the intelligence agencies. So that's still in process. I would like everybody to keep that in mind. Also, the office, as it was described, is going to be absorbing resources from other agencies, from the Department of Energy, from the intelligence agencies, from various Pentagon groups, different things. That's not going to be in their budget lined out in the budget. Those are people and resources that are going to get pulled in that other groups will pay for. If you combine all the money that gets spent to do this job of this office, it's a pretty big number. Their baseline budget might not even be 100 million, but they're going to be absorbing a lot more resources. And plus, it's spaced out over 6 years. And then you multiply that out, you got a pretty big number. So from what we're hearing, yeah, that's all going to happen, but it's kind of in process right now. The marching orders have to be fulfilled. The agencies involved, they're responsible to go and say, oh, these are the marching orders. How they fulfill them is kind of up to them, but only to a limit, because they have to report back later this year and go, here's what we did to fulfill this. So yeah, it's anybody that comes out and tells you, I know exactly how much money is going to be spent and how many people are going to be offered, hired for this office and what they're going to be doing. They don't know, because the office doesn't know. The office is in its nascency. They're getting together, but they're not going to roll over and say, rub my belly. And the AOI, many serious sergeants organization is not going to tell them what's going to happen. It's going to be the way that Congress wanted. But the funding and all that, I hate to tell everybody, we're going to have to wait a while because that has to get sorted out. The budget was only just barely approved. The money now has to be distributed, and we'll find out later exactly where everything landed.
How much of a risk is it that, the powers that be in the Pentagon take this, charter from Congress and just fund it to do the very bare minimum and try to kind of sabotage it that way? Is that a possibility?
Huge risk. I rather's right on point here. We do have a sad history in terms of UAP, UFO stuff in the past, where if Congress takes any interest, it's like, okay, we'd like to know about, I guess, this thing, but that's up to the intelligence community, the military, and, go check it out and let us know what you find out. And then you get Project Blue Book, then you get Grudge, then you get Sign. This sounds different. This sounds like we have a group of people who have been shown, group of people I should specify in Congress, who have been shown very classified things. They're very concerned, and now they want to ride herd over it. That's my interpretation only, and a few of our sources I've spoken to. So it's a complicated relationship between Congress and the military. They control the budget. They give them orders. The Pentagon is going to have to follow those orders. How they follow them and how much follow-up is done, how much the IGs go, okay, are you doing what you've been told to do? That's a balancing act right there. So they're under a lot of pressure to do the right thing, or right thing as I would personally interpret it in terms of transparency and doing these things. But no, they get their money. They've been told what they have to produce. The specific line items you're going to produce, these reports by these dates that we saw, those are going to be reported. There's going to be an office created. There's going to be people working for that office. That we know. How sincere they are, how much work they put in, how much they want to be transparent, I think rather is correct. It's a question of how closely all the people in Congress who are now engaged in this subject, how much do they follow it? When we get the first report, are they going to take the report and go, oh, you said it was all circus balloons. All right. And if they walk away, then we lost. If they try that, and the people in Congress that have been giving all these interviews saying, not saying I was in the craft. Excuse me.
Okay.
Classified briefings. No, we want to see the actual stuff. Is there going to be any pushback? How much pushback will there be? That's the question. So to answer what Rather was saying, no, we're not in the clear whatsoever. It depends on whether or not both the House and the Senate and the key players you guys are talking about, are they going to be aggressive? Are they going to stick with this? Okay, we gave you this money. We want these reports. You'll get the reports. The money will be spent. How satisfied will you be with the reports? And if they're trying to be like, oh, don't worry, everything's fine. We found the balloon. We're good, right? And thanks for the money. Could it go that way? I mean, it's happened in the past. Hopefully, the people we have working on this are more serious right now. And if they try to defy the will of the Senate and the will of Congress, then they're going to be held to task and there's going to be hell to pay. That's what I'm hoping for. And it does sound like a lot of people who are not running on this subject to get reelected, like they're really sincere about it. It's like, you have to tell us. We have to do this work, and Congress is going to oversee it. If they stick with that, and I will be monitoring this, if they stick with that and they hold the noses to the grindstone, then yeah, I think it's going to go okay. If they lose focus and drift off to something else, then I'm worried about the same thing Rather is. It's like, well, we put up a good front. We got some good headlines. We spent some money. Oh, UFOs. Yeah, we're concerned. And now we're going to go worry about new dog regulations. Then it could all go to hell. So I don't have an answer.
So then at what point do you think would be an appropriate amount of time before we, the people, start asking some questions and putting the pressure on and being like, hey, where's the money going? What the hell's going on with the office? Who's in charge? Where's it, what are the plans?
Oh, very shortly, but let's not push it until we get the first reports that were mandated in the law. Is the office going to be established? What do we get told about that? The initial report, we had Ruben Galejo talking about the initial classified briefings and the public briefings that are going to happen, or public briefing, singular, sorry.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. I would say September of this year. By that point, we're going to hit those benchmarks, and we'll see what we did get and what we didn't get, and how much any of the people in Congress that are now actively engaged. My big concern, and I hate to drag politics into this with you guys, September is the date when a lot of that's going to hit. That is 2 months before the midterm elections. How much are these people going to be worried about continuing to push the UAP topic 2 months from midterm election that is going to determine so many other things that have nothing to do with it? We could get to a lull, I think. I'm afraid of that, around October, September. But if they don't come through, once the election's done, it's done. And hopefully the same people will still maintain the same level of activity and interest and making sure the public is informed. And we may have to take a pause near the midterms. When I say we, I mean the ufology community in general. And then wait until the midterms are over, and then maybe do another big phone home, and go, okay, here's what we got. Here's what we didn't. Why didn't we get this? Everybody call, ask, something like that. I'm not depressed. I think it's just politics being politics.
Right.
There could be some delays that people are not going to be happy about.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm surprised we haven't gotten one yet, to be honest. I mean,
we will soon. We're in midterm year, man. It's gonna DC turns into hot garbage right now.
Yeah. Frank, any thoughts? Any additions onto what Jazz might be saying here?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was some really great points from Jazz. I kind of scrolled down a few things, and basically a lot of it all concurs with what Jazz says. I think if we look at the AOISMG when it was first set up, I mean, it looks like that was to kind of like head off Congress at the pass, and then there was some skillful kind of back trading going on, and the Gillibrand amendment was diluted down. Okay, so that does show that both the DoD and the sort of wider intelligence community, which elements the DoD are part of, they do have a lot of bargaining power, and they can engage in horse trading. And as a bureaucracy, they're very skilled at this. I think it's going to be really important going forward to see, and it kind of echoes what Jazz says, whether they obviously have to follow the letter of the law as it's been laid down, but will they really follow the spirit? Right. And I think that's a key point. And I think, there's just a lot of opportunity for a bureaucracy to really kind of mold the way things are going, even though they have to follow the letter of the law. They've got their kind of chess pieces in place already. So I think that's going to be worth very close watching going forward. And I think Jazz is absolutely right with all the points that he made.
Are you hopeful or pessimistic about the outcome here?
I mean, I want to be optimistic, but I never doubt the ability of a large bureaucracy and a Byzantine bureaucracy. I mean, to try and get its own way. So, it's a game that they play, and the fact that, for example, they didn't want this, the part of the Gillibrand Amendment, they didn't want the sort of scientific advisory community, and especially they didn't want Elizondo and Chris Mellon anywhere near it. It's because they don't want oversight.
That was their biggest victory, Frank, by getting rid of the scientific community. That was their biggest victory, because what they were trying to do, just my opinion, but I think you and I talked to some of the same sources, they weren't that mad about Avi Loeb. They didn't want Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo anywhere near this.
Concur, absolutely. And that's the feeling that I got from I mean, Chris Mellon was no comment about it, but that's kind of feeling that I got from him, having had various conversations with him. And then when I talked to another source, they said, that basically DOD and the IC, they did not want, Mellon and Elizondo there because those two guys know all the tricks that they play. They've been on the inside. They know all the tricks.
Mellon just wrote a blog about how they should give the position back to Lou Elizondo, and my question was, well, how do we know Lou wants that job? I feel like I don't know if he would even want it, but then again, I don't think Christopher Mellon would have written that article if he hadn't at least ran it by Lou and been like, hey, what do you think of this idea?
Just personally, Chris didn't write that article because he wanted Lou to be hired back.
Right.
He wrote that article to point out the fact that they would never hire Lou because they're still at war with Lou. It was a sort of anybody that's in the scene that was an underhanded knife.
What do you
just
think,
my
rather?
take.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of I'd be shocked if the DOD would, offer a position to Lou Elizondo, just because it seems like if someone quits like Lou Elizondo did, he kind of burned his bridges. I feel like to some degree. Not that I totally agree with what Lou did, but I mean, from the DOD's perspective, I wouldn't be shocked. I would be shocked if they considered him at all.
Can you guys cover for like 3 minutes?
Definitely, Jazz. Definitely.
I think there also might be another side to that, is that there may very well be those in the DOD and the IC who actually kind of support Lou's position, and that's another reason, because people would be worried effectively. This kind of balancing act that we hear about between those who want, in the DOD and the IC, those who want to kind of put more information out there and those who don't at all. I think that could be, a very divisive issue as well if you had Elizondo back. But I think, it's not what the poor guy wanted after everything that's been through. It'd be probably nice to get his pension back. I'm sure he'd be happy with that.
For sure. The pension would be nice.
I mean, he's kind of like a lightning rod for controversy, right? Like, yeah, I agree. It would complicate things. I think that he could probably add a lot of value, but there would be people who would look at that and cry foul as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't pull a fast one on him, and you can't pull a fast one on Chris Mellon, and that's why they didn't want them involved. Especially with the sort of scientific advisory committee, they just didn't want them anywhere near it because you can't pull the wool over those guys.
I'm just thinking, for just a second, what would the community say if Lou Elizondo did get hired again? Like, would we be split right down the middle in very similar ways that maybe how the IC is split down the middle on him?
I think you would. I mean, you have people kind of trotting out all kinds of conspiracy rubbish again.
I mean, look, feel like he would catch a ration of shit for it.
I mean, look. Right at the beginning, when I wrote my first paper, I asked Colonel John. Well, he actually said to me, he said, "Look, as you can probably guess, he said, I know Lou Elizondo, I know Chris Mellon, I know Eric Davis, I know Hal Puthoff. I mean, they're kind of like his peer group, right? Especially the scientists. They've been around together for decades." And he said to me, and I put it in the paper. He said, "No, I agree with you because I don't think that TTSA, who Elizondo was then associated with, because I don't think it's some kind of psyop or some kind of deep state plant." It really isn't.
Speaking of PSYOP and deep state plants, let's bring on Bob Plissken. I'm just kidding.
Hey, Bob.
I'm just kidding. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
Gentlemen. Yeah, thank you for having me and inviting me on. Sorry, I'm a little late. I was cooking dinner for the family.
No, it's all good, man. I'm surprised you were able to make it. We truly appreciate your time. We know
very
you're
glad
busy
you made
there
it
in DC, but yeah. So I was literally just about to read your comments in the chat here about you don't need to pay attention to the budget. The budgetary number, the entire Marine Corps budget is around $6 billion. The entire Marine Corps budget is, or don't get caught up with the monetary amount of the budget. Essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah, essentially. I wouldn't get too caught up in that because all the other agencies are tasked with supporting each other. So if the AOI MSG or whatever the organization, the office ends up being, if they have the ability to create a collection plan, then they'll be able to task the other agencies in their own respective collection ability, and it'll come out of, I believe, it'll come out of those agencies' budgets. So it's not, with $22 million, they made X amount of reports already. So you don't really need a lot of money. Several $1 million, you're just basically covering for any type of contractors that you need to bring in, any contracts. But a lot of those capabilities likely already exist.
Right. So it's then I sounds like what you're saying is you may not need that much money because the offices, the apparatus is sort of already in full formation. So you could kind of lean on it, essentially, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
So therefore you could, I mean, you know, but how many people do you think would be in an office like this? What would be the right number? So, you know, what would be, I guess, the number that Christopher Mello would be happy with, or Lou Elizondo, of people working on this on a full-time basis?
I think so. Personally, the way that I would like to see it structured, with my very limited time in the intelligence community, it would basically be what I came from when I was at a Marine Expeditionary Unit. We had representatives from all of the intelligence facets. We had SIGINT, HUMINT, IMIT, GINT, we had everybody under one roof, and it helped us in a fusion capacity. So when the imagery people were doing their analysis, I was sitting right next to them or over their shoulder, or I had SIGINT in the next room doing their stuff, so we could all work together. And I believe that in order to have the best products, you'd want representatives, or at least somebody that's been around long enough that has a good social network within the intelligence community where they can reach out and have a good relationship with other people and other agencies. But again, the budget isn't, that would more, in my mind, it seems that would be more of an administrative type thing. As long as you can reach out, bring in experts in their own respective profession. And then, but other than that, it's mostly going to be travel, paper, printers, computers, those types of things, because you're not buying a satellite. You're just tasking the time. It's already there. You know, you're not buying another, intelligence collection asset that's already exists, and then you're just getting it out in the community. Another point that I wanted to bring up that you gentlemen were just speaking of was getting rid of the science oversight. Now, I like that it was in the initial, but even though it was cut, I would say the legal side of that is that legislators cannot tell a civilian corporation what to do. So they can't say SCU is going to give us 2 people, because SCU hasn't agreed to that.
Right.
And that might, another civilian UAP organization might say, well, why are they getting the seats? Why aren't we getting seats? So
I know Mick West has already said that. He's like, well, why does SCU get one, but I don't?
Exactly. And so legally, they might have to put it out as in a bid, or the organization might have to reach out and then hire people that end up being the administrators over it. So that might have been the cart before the horse type of situation. But I like the fact that it was in there because it shows the intent of which way this organization is going to go. So it's almost like a warning of the DOD isn't going to want to have a civilian oversight, but it's coming, and we're going to figure out how to get it in. We might not be able to get it in now, and we might have done it a little too early, but that's where we're going. So prepare for it.
Well, that's mostly true, by the way. But not entirely. I think we have a lot of organizations inside the military-industrial complex that are technically under the control of Congress. The Congress controls the funding.
We lost Jazz.
But
what do you think to his initial point there, Bob, or Frank?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I was going to say a quick point about SCU. I mean, I know why SCU would have been pinged for it, likely by Chris Mellon and Louis Zonda behind the scene. It's because of some of the people who are at SCU and who are already involved and have been deeply involved in UAP studies for like a long time and advising, different programs, including ORSAP. Okay, so that's why SCU is put in there. And also, I mean, if you look at people like Rich Hoffman, I mean, the guy is already security cleared and he probably knows more than just about anybody about UAP, having been studying UFOs and everything else since before Blue Book ended. I mean, he's really, been around the block more times than most people. So I think there's that. I was going to say where the money might start clocking up is really in two areas. One is security, okay? Because, and I'll start off with this though. It says, when it says the secretary in coordination of the directors shall designate, and they talk about line organizations that possess appropriate expertise, authorities, access, data, systems, platforms, and capabilities. And this is the key words, to rapidly respond to, okay? So if you have, for example, a UAP goes down or something interesting discovered, like in the jungle of Brazil or in, the middle of the Rocky Mountains somewhere, you don't want to be spending like 24 or 48 or 72 hours on the phone trying to ring around and get something organized. You want to have like a rapid response team. You want to have, sort of organic, preferably it would be. You'd need to be able to get vehicles in there. You need to be able to get helos in there. If vehicles can't get in there, say something went down, for example, in a lake in the middle of the mountains, there might be no road there. It might only be trails. So you've got to get heavy equipment in there that's going to be able to maybe drag something out of a lake at 3,000 meters. So you're not talking something that, you just write on the back of a cigarette packet and kind of hope for the best. You need to have basically established procedures, right? Established standing operating procedures, so that you and assets, you know exactly who you can task. Right, I've got these engineers, I've got this company or two companies of rangers or infantry who will actually protect the scene. I've got these guys to do coordination with the federal, state, county, local level cops. Okay, because you've got to think about all these things like managing the press. All those types of issues. This isn't something that you do, after it happens. This is something you want to have. You want to have like your folder ready with all your assets, all your communications, and all the people that you need to call as soon as something happens. So you can just press the button and it all goes into effect. So that's where money's going to clock up, and also on the security as well, because presumably this is going to be going more and more into special access programs and unacknowledged special access programs. So that's really where security becomes more expensive. And I'm not just talking about, physical security, lights. I mean, a lot of that infrastructure is already there. I'm talking where people need maybe, for example, personal protection, things like that. I presumably they'd already be in an office somewhere. They'll already have that set up. So that's not going to be a cost. But the kind of wider human security, personnel security issues will be expensive.
That's interesting. That seems like maybe a potential tell of if the agency is following the letter and not the spirit by the response time, right? If we see the reports and they're taking days to respond to something, that could be something that Congress might be able to push back on.
Yeah, but I mean, it does say to rapidly respond to. So to me, rapidly respond to means that, you can be anywhere in the continental United States, like within, I don't know, what be reasonable, like, 8 hours, and anywhere in the world within like 12 hours, I guess. I mean, America's got the assets to be able to respond all around the world. But you need to have these assets pre-assigned. It's no good saying, okay, yeah, I'll use like, for example, this force recon unit to go in and like secure a site, or I'll use, these Air Force special operations to go and, who are based, for example, in Japan, to go and secure a site on some atoll, because they may be doing something else at the time. You would need to have a unit that can immediately go in and basically secure the site, and then all the equipment and the other experts and the main security force come in. That's what you'd need. And obviously you need to be able to get them there by ship, by plane, helicopter, whatever it is.
A lot of those capabilities already exist. So let's say the hypothetical, something goes down in anywhere in CONUS, continental United States. You have the Air Force Office of Special Investigation. You have the Navy has NCIS. The Army has the Criminal Investigative Division. So each each of these already existing organizations would be able to, as long as there's an Army base or an Air Force base or Navy base somewhere close, they would be able to be tasked potentially. So then if the office is a higher authority, they could potentially task the lower organizations that already exist that are in the geographic area to initially go out, secure the scene, conduct the initial investigation until the office is able to put their own boots on the ground. So again, relying on the giant infrastructure of what the DoD and the intelligence community have. So there are capabilities everywhere, as long as the office is a higher organization to be able to task lower subordinate units.
Yeah, see, because my concern is if we're going off of what Lieutenant Graves said or Commander Fort Graves said, that he saw these things every day, I would assume you would have your own team of people just assigned to that area of the continental United States, looking and maybe even on the ship. So as soon as these guys deplane, they can start getting the data and deciphering what it means. I mean, that's so.
But the N2, the naval apparatus that exists within whatever fleet or whatever carrier strike group is in that area, they can collect all the data and just forward it to the office. As long as there is a uniform reporting, anybody can collect it. Once the DoD has the uniform reporting plan, then they can insert the data and fire it off. You might not necessarily need a person that goes out there and collects it.
So then I'm sorry to cut you off, from your perspective, then what are some of the red flags that we as the public can look for to make sure that end of the bargain is being upheld by whoever is collecting this, that it is being turned in the proper way?
I would be aware of choke points and information. So if you have information needs to go through one central office before it gets passed on to the office, and it's not happening, then there's a problem there. And that was my initial worry with the AOI MSG office, is because the way that I initially read it, I don't have it right in front of me, it seemed like a DoD choke point, to where the office would have been under ODNI, and then DoD organizations would have to filter their information through AOI MSG. I could have been reading it wrong. Now that some time has passed, I'd have to go over it again. My worry was that AOI MSG would have filtered out information instead of just passing everything to the office, and the office, does their own investigation. But that's what I would be looking for.
Yeah, guys, I'm just reading through again when it says ability to respond. So in the previous paragraph, they said the personnel, systems, platforms with expertise to rapidly respond to. Then it says under ability to respond, the secretary in coordination with the director shall ensure that each line organization designated under paragraph 1 has adequate personnel with the requisite expertise, equipment, transportation, and other resources necessary to respond rapidly to incidents or patterns of observations, including unidentified aerial phenomena. So I'm asking myself, so would they have some of their own like organic resources, or do they have sufficient mandate that they can just go, I don't know, for example, to an MEU or a local, a regional Air Force Special Air Operations unit, and just go, right, we're taking your resources, we're going to use your resources, and we need your aviation assets as well. That's what I'm asking myself, because of what it says in the paragraph. Because do they really want everybody responding to it, or do they only want their own people responding to it? I mean, I'm just trying to put that out there.
No, it doesn't read to me that it would be a superior organization that could suck up a regional unit and just take control of it. But I was just suggesting that would be an option. That if let's say, so you're going to have a regional unit is going to be the initial organization that reports this. So you'll have an Army unit that says, hey, we're observing these things, or an Air Force unit or Navy unit that's reporting it. So they're already going to have potentially organic units and capabilities that are organic to whatever military organization is making these observations. And then from that, while that unit is conducting its own collection, the task force will have the budget to be able to fly out one of their own analysts or one of their own investigators. But I mean, at that point, when you think of the budget on that, so that's a plane ticket. Then you got to lodge them. You know, you got to give them per diem. You know, so it's not outside of the realm of every other organization that already exists. So it's extremely different, but at the same time, it's going to be another office that, you know, conducts other types of things for the DoD.
So I guess there may be a sort of like a combat indicator for us is how sort of rapidly they respond, right? The keyword being rapidly.
Yeah, I like to think that I respond to emails rapidly, but it can take me weeks sometimes.
The reasonable person. So whatever rapidly is, what a reasonable person would believe is rapidly. Whatever that is.
I would think at least, depending on the mission, on the objective of the ask, a couple days tops.
Well, it could be interesting, right? If these are reported daily in different places,
right?
You know, they
how
might
big
have
this office could be.
Yeah, they might have to expand rapidly to respond rapidly.
Right.
But for instance, it's like just an anecdotal story. So we'd be deployed forward, and one of our systems would go down. Whoever supports that system would have a contractor on our ship within a day. Or within a few days, fixing whatever the system was. Or if we were forward, they're fixing the system because they're supporting it. So again, it's not, and that was within our one small facet of the United States Marine Corps budget, is to be able to get a private contractor out there to support the contract that they hold. So it's, again, not really, it doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't have to be anywhere close to the B word. And it's just to really be able to make a significant impact and to put out good products.
Well, that's good to hear. But it's also kind of, it's a little worrisome, only just because we have to rely on these choke points that have been in place for a couple of decades. To all of a sudden not be choke points. And how is this office going to be able to untangle those choke points, or at least clear them up so that the information flows properly? And making sure that, you know, like Jazz said, holding our, you know, elected officials to that fire, and how interested are they going to be, or how aggressive are they going to be in a midterm election on that? So those are, I guess, my worries, but I guess we have to wait and see, right?
Yeah. Will we ever know how much budget this office gets? Will we get a line item at any point, or it will always be kind of nebulous exactly how much resources they're getting?
Well, so just look at another paragraph, use of resource and capabilities. In developing the plan under paragraph 2, the head of the office established under subsection A shall consider and propose, as the head determines appropriate, the use of any resource, capability, asset, or process of the department and the intelligence community. So I think that answers, basically what was being said previously by Bob. Okay, that they have access to those resources already, but that would seem to me that the office has to have a high mandate to be able to say, right, we need those resources right now.
Well, what I'm curious in the case of, let's just say, recovered material, someone asks, would this go to a centralized place, or do you think that there would be an argument between, say an AOI MSG office or whatever the office ends up being, and whatever, say the Air Force is the one that collected it? Would they be having a struggle with who gets this recovered material?
That is a really great question.
Yeah, it seems like there could be a fight between the foreign technology desk, right? The I forget his name, but the day after Roswell, that the Corso, Lieutenant
Corso's
Corso
position
seems like it'd be very hard to determine if this is an alien artifact or a foreign artifact.
Yeah, I wonder, Bob, are you still there? We didn't lose.
I am.
Bob,
I
too.
am. I was bringing up notes from the last time that I was here, so I could.
Got it. Okay. Just FYI, guys, Jazz is having some technical issues, so he's working on it, trying to come back. So hopefully we'll have him back here soon. But yeah, I mean, I just figured let's touch base on this because we haven't talked about this in about a month or two. But it's curious. It's gonna be interesting to see. I guess we're in a holding pattern right now when it comes to this. Is I guess the bottom line. But there definitely seems to be some red flags that we can look for. Things that we as the public might be able to, again, when we call and we activate ourselves, have a formulated question to ask or issue to raise when it does come to that point, because we have to be vigilant. If not, it could fall into this dangerous place of, that the spirit of the bill is not being followed and it's just kind of being ignored. So it's on us as much as it is on our elected officials and as much as it is on these offices or people that are carrying out these suggestions and laws and whatnot. So anyway,
I was going to say, I think Jazz's point about, basically people like, us who are interested in it, keeping the interest alive, with things like Big Phone Home. I thought that was a really excellent point, because I think the people in Congress, they need to be reminded that, look, we're still interested in this. So please don't let up.
Yeah. No, we're definitely not going to let up. And we've got some cool ideas, I think, for the next Big Phone Home. We're going to just wait and see what happens with the new office and what happens and what are going to be the suggestions as to what we should organize and do in regards to that. But I'm curious, Bob, what's your opinion on groups like the Galileo Project or UAPX or SCU doing funding and starting to look into this topic on their own? Do you think that puts any pressure on this new office or the government at all to try and provide people some answers before the answers are provided, say, by either a private entity like them or, God forbid, a foreign government like China or Russia?
Yeah, I would say that you don't want to be caught with your pants down, and that would be a lot of egg on the face of the intelligence community if all of a sudden an organization that just got thrown together within the last 12 months all of a sudden comes out with something historic. I think that just would be quite embarrassing. However, the argument of they were acting in good faith would be that these things were basically just caught behind the apparatus of national security. We're not going to give up our satellite's capabilities to give you a picture of something that is extraordinary. That's not their job. That's not their mandate. Their job is to fight and win wars, basically, to stay one step ahead of our adversaries and our competitors, to keep our warfighters alive and keep a tactical advantage so that if we ever do have a fight with Russia or China, that we win.
Do you think the next fight with Russia or China will be something technological, or would it be more cyber? I mean, cyber is technological, but I'm saying hardware versus a cyber attack.
Physical destruction versus
Correct. Yeah. Boots on the ground, guns in hands.
I think that they would take advantage of all of our reliance on technology at this point. It's a force multiplier. It's a great thing for us, but it's also been a linchpin. And it's something that can be absolutely exploited, and that they will take advantage of. So we might be seeing in the next month or so. We'll see what happens in Ukraine.
Oh God, man, yeah, this is scary and interesting times all at the same time. Well, Bob and Frank. We are reaching the end of the show here. So what I'll do is I'll give you some closing thoughts, Bob, on I guess on the new year, things that we've learned, things to look forward to, whatever you want. Essentially, floor is yours.
I would say that I'm excited of what this next year is going to give. I would also say that there are behind the scenes people that aren't really as active on the social media side of this. There are serious people.
Go ahead. Sorry.
There are serious people that are trying to make this a serious matter.
100%. Lou, yeah, having issues over there? Looks like we lost Lou for a second, but
but I'm looking forward to hear what Frank has to say too.
Yeah, Frank, why don't you give us your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen this year in terms of UAP. I'm just very, very hopeful that there is like some major tear up over somewhere like the Ukraine or in the South China Sea. That's what I really hope, because then you can forget everything else. Everything else will just go by the wayside. I think just quickly, the point about cyber, I think we've already seen that. I mean, when you have pipelines being shut down, oil pipelines shut down, energy infrastructure being shut down in the United States as a result of hacks, I'd argue that it's already started.
I believe Ukraine just had a significant cyber attack. I think the last 24 hours. So.
Well, I mean, we've had our cyber attacks here too, right? I mean, that's something that is being kind of wholly ignored by the media as a whole, is how vulnerable our systems are to cyber attacks. So look into it. It's all I can say. It's pretty scary stuff. But yeah, I can't thank you gentlemen enough for being here. Bob, where can people find you on Twitter in case they want to follow you, because you're an amazing source, one of a few amazing sources out there to go to when news breaks, especially when it comes to the NDAA or this new office. Tell people where they can find you, please.
You can find me on Twitter at SnakePo9.
Excellent. And I'll put Bob's Twitter handle in the description below as soon as the show is over. Bob, thank you so much for spending these last 40 minutes with us. I know your time is precious, so I truly appreciate your wisdom.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. It was good talking to you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. See you soon. Frank, beautiful man. Somebody, you're muted, but somebody had said, who was it? I think it was Christopher Plain that said that Michael aged quite a bit in reference to you, calling you Michael, essentially, since Michael's not here.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but
I think Frank looks younger than Mike.
I think Frank looks younger than Mike. I mean, honestly, this could be Mike we're actually talking to. But Frank, before you get out of here, please tell everyone where they can find you in case they have any questions or
Yeah, I mean, at Frank Milburn on Twitter. Also, actually, I've got increasingly amount of people sort of UAP related connecting with me on LinkedIn, including people who work in like aerospace and defense, like executives and stuff. It's quite strange. There's a lot of people interested in the topic.
Yeah, indeed there is. All right, Frank, we'll see you next time. We truly appreciate it, my good sir. That was a good show, man.
Yeah, very fun.
That was fun. Unfortunately, Michael couldn't make it. Jazz ran out of battery on the phone, so all sorts of stuff. But we got through it. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you, DOS Tapes. Thank you to everyone in the super chats. We had some really cool first timers for the show. Jasper Mars Franceschi was the first time watching and says that nobody looks like he imagined, which is hilarious. And Rent Sales. This was his first time finally catching the show live. So thank you guys for being here. Want to say thank you to KGRADB and Bill backstage. Want to say thank you to Rather and Michael and Jane for a great week. Check out the links below for our merch and our Patreon. I love all of you guys. Stay safe out there. Peace. I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.
I believe you're enjoying all this. Indeed, Captain. I've never seen him look so happy.
Shut up.
Shh. Shh.
Well, what do you know? I finally got the last word.